Yo, what's up guys, you're back with Tech Nick, and today we have an unboxing of the Realme X50 5G paired against two of my favorite smartphones from 2019, also 2020, being the Oppo. The Redmi K30 comes with a wonderful 64 megapixel Sony IMX686 sensor. It looks pretty gorgeous in this purple color, so we'll compare this to the Realme as well. And then we also have the Oppo Reno 3 Pro 5G over here with a little bit of an old school 48 megapixel IMX586 sensor that looks absolutely stunning, and it has a curved AMOLED panel in the front. So back to the X50 over here. This is the 8GB of RAM, 128GB version. And if you guys are interested in price, take a look at the top right corner, but just bear in mind that those are conversion rates from the Chinese RMB currency. The little silicon cover is not much to write home about, but it's good for day one use. And we have USB 2.1 speeds out the box with a USB Type-C cable. We also have a charging block over here, though it is limited to 30 watt speed over here, so nothing crazy like the X2 Pro's 50 watt speed. And comparing it to the Oppo's, it's literally the exact same block at 30 watts, and the Xiaomi 27 watt block is almost the same size. Now back to the Oppo, listen to that. Oof, absolutely stunning guys, that sound just gets me every time I unbox a new phone. And here we have it, the Realme X50 5G. This thing is an absolute monster at a really good price, pretty much right in the middle of the prices between the Redmi K30 and the Oppo Reno 3 Pro 5G, which we are comparing it to over here. I really like this blue shimmer at the back, and it has some like vertical triangular lines going through the back of it when you hit some light on it, and with the cover on you can actually see that too. Once again, pretty decent for day one use, but nothing to write home about. Now we have the three phones over here. All the branding looks pretty good. Thank goodness Realme ditched that side branding next to the camera that they had on the X2 Pro. It looks a lot better here, and we have a side mounted fingerprint sensor on the Realme as well as the Redmi here, since both of them have IPS LCD screens and not AMOLED screens, disappointingly enough. And on the Redmi we have the volume rocker on the right, but on the left of the Realme we have the volume rocker on the left hand side, and it is split just like the Oppo's, as you guys will see here. I really do prefer a split volume rocker, guys. Please just do this with all smartphone companies out there. Okay, we have ditched the headphone jack on the Oppo and the Realme over here. It seems like it's something that BBK Electronics is starting to do. The Xiaomi is still in for the mix, and unfortunately, well, fortunately we do have dual SIM, but unfortunately we do not have a micro SD slot option for the Realme X50 over here. Slightly disappointing since we do have it on the Redmi K30, and that is a cheaper phone. We also have a downward firing speaker over here, and we have a top kind of silly little speaker. I'm pretty sure this is not dual speaker. And then we have dual selfie cams over here. One of them is a main selfie cam, the other one is ultra wide, but we'll get to that a little bit later. As for the quad camera setup at the back, we have a 64 megapixel GW1 sensor. That is the Samsung sensor, pretty much lower grade than the IMX686 sensor. We have an ultra wide sensor of 8 megapixels, 12 megapixel telephoto for 2x optical zoom, and 2 megapixel macro mode. I would have preferred that to be a depth sensor, but nevertheless, we have the depth sensor on the K30 as well as a macro sensor on the K30. 64 megapixel IMX686 sensor on the K30, though the aperture is slightly smaller than the one on the Realme, and an 8 megapixel ultra wide. The Oppo Reno has all of them as well, but a 48 megapixel main camera over there. And it does not have the macro sensor there, so it will be interesting to see how that is, because it actually has a black and white sensor. When jumping into the software, we're using the first Realme UI interface over here, and honestly it looks exactly the same as ColorOS 7. It is running on Android 10 over here. The software looks literally identical to every single Oppo phone and Realme phone I have unboxed in the last couple months. And putting it side by side with all the other phones, checking out the display over here, we have two LCD screens on the right hand side and the AMOLED on the Oppo on the left hand side. And you can see the brightness on the Oppo is slightly higher, but here is the Redmi on the right hand side and the Realme on the left. They both almost have the exact same panel, though the Realme is a 6.57 inch panel and the Redmi is 6.67 inches. Now I have the Redmi on the left hand side so we can compare the little pill drop notches, I guess you could say. The whites are pretty much identical on both of them, though guys I must say the Realme brightness really does disappoint me. We have it on the left there again. Now we have the Oppo on our left and the Realme on our right hand side here. And I do think that some of the color accuracy is slightly better on the Realme, but definitely color brightness wise is a lot lower on the Realme compared to the Oppo over here. And we also have that wonderful curved AMOLED display on the Oppo with a max brightness of 800 nits, which is way higher than the other two. But we do have 120 Hz refresh rates on the Redmi and Realme, and a 90 Hz on the Oppo. Honestly, you're not going to notice much of a difference between 90 and 120, especially when you're gaming, since most games cannot go past 80 or 90 frames per second, even with a Snapdragon 855 Plus processing chip. We have dark mode on all of them, but that kind of doesn't make sense on the Realme and Redmi since they are rocking LCD displays. So so it's actually worse for battery. It's only really good for AMOLED displays, battery life, though the blacks are obviously the deepest on the Oppo. And we also have a wonderful always on display clock, which you are lacking on the Redmi and the Realme over here, since they are LCD screens. So there are some drawbacks of having an LCD screen other than the brightness, I guess I would say, and the viewing angles. Now we also have a Snapdragon 765G on the Oppo and the Realme, but we have a 730G on the Redmi over here. The Redmi 5G version does have the same chipset as the two phones on the left, the 765G, but I don't have that version here with me. I still think that this is the best bang for buck that you do see here on the Redmi over here. And as you guys can see, it said Color OS on both devices. Once I updated the Realme, Color OS disappeared off that. We do have some awesome gesture styles over here, guys, and it looks really good on all phones, but I must say I do prefer Oppo and Realme's take on it, since they are practically the same company, where you can swipe up gestures from the bottom corners of each phone, where Xiaomi only allow you to swipe in from the sides of the phone. When it comes to fingerprint sensors, the Realme's physical sensor is definitely slightly faster than the Oppo's, but I do think that the Oppo's is more accurate most of the time. And then when it comes to facial unlock, I don't know what's happening with this Realme. Sometimes it instantly goes in, sometimes it stays on the lock screen. I do have it set to instantly go in, and the Oppo's is faster regardless anyway, because sometimes the Realme is not reliable when it comes to facial unlock. You'll see again now when we go against the Redmi K30 over here. So we're going to start with physical fingerprint testing over here, and the Redmi and the Realme are literally identical. It's probably because they're using the exact same fingerprint sensor over here. It's like Realme were like, well guys, let's quickly copy Redmi before anyone else does. And as you guys can see, that facial recognition issue once again on the Realme X50 on the right hand side over here. Slightly annoying, but we do have a nice little glow around the selfie camera over there. We do have all these cameras over here, and we're going to be testing them out with my friend Yoda over here. So Groot is gone for now, guys. We have a lot more detail in Yoda, and you guys will see that when we start up with the pictures. He looks absolutely awesome, and I cannot wait to show you guys. This is only my second video with him. We're starting with ultra wides over here, Oppo on the left, Realme in the middle, and Redmi on the right. Now this is a cropped main of their main lenses, and I do think that the Oppo and the Realme look the best. The Redmi is suffering a little bit there with color accuracy as well as detail. Now when it comes to the portrait modes, things look pretty similar, but the optical, we do have 2x optical on the Oppo and the Realme, but the Redmi is limited to digital, and there is no macro lens on the Oppo, but it looks pretty great. But the macro lens on the Realme does a pretty great job. Now this is taking pictures outside of my apartment here. I think the bin shots look a lot better than the regular shots that you see. And then we have this 2x optical over here. Once again, I think that the Redmi is absolutely terrible because there is no telephoto lens here. We do have hybrid on the Realme all the way up to 20x, but we have 20x digital on the Oppo and no 20x option on the Redmi. So we do have portrait mode over here with selfie cams, which looks pretty great, but we have ultra wide with the Realme X50, which is really awesome, guys. That is a really epic feature to have. Now with all devices, we are capped at 4K 30 frames per second. I say capped because we cannot get more than 30 frames per second when recording at 4K due to the mid-range chipsets. We need an 855 plus, or the new 865. Though we do have 1080p at 60 frames per second, which is good to see. This is upscaled to 4K because this is indeed a 4K video. But everything looks pretty good. I must say that the Realme actually looks very, very stable. Then the Oppo and then the Redmi, and the Oppo actually has optical image stabilization where the other two do not. Now this is with ultra steady off. There is no super stable on the Redmi, but you can see how much more stable it is on the Realme and the Oppo, especially the Realme. I'm really impressed with the super stable on there, well, the ultra steady as BBK Electronics call it. I think it looks really awesome on those two devices. And then we also have ultra wide over here, which is capped at 30 frames per second, 1080p on both devices. The Xiaomi Mi Note 10 Pro can do 4K at 30 frames per second ultra wide, but these are limited to 1080p at 30 frames per second. We have a 30 watt block on the Oppo, we have a 30 watt block on the Realme over here for the charging comparison, and we have a 27 watt block on the Redmi K30 over here. We're going to go ahead and start these up, and we're going to be starting at 50% of juice, guys. I'm not going to wait for all of them to drain because I just took the Realme out the box over here. So take a look at the top of each phone over there. You can see the size of the battery and what we have charged to and from, and we're hitting 60% on the Oppo and the Realme and 58% on the Redmi. So just 8% up on the Redmi in just 5 minutes. There's that interval timer at the top right corner, so keep an eye on that. 10-minute mark, we have 20% of juice on the Oppo, 20% on the Realme, and 18% on the Redmi. I must say the Redmi is impressing me because it has a much bigger battery than the others and slower wattage charging over here. After 15 minutes, we're stopping over here, guys, 80%, which is 30% more on the Oppo, 29% on the Realme, and 27% on the Redmi over here. I must say I'm really impressed with the Redmi because it has a bigger battery and lower wattage, though I am slightly disappointed with the Oppo since it has the smallest battery of the bunch and very high watts it's charging. We have turned all the displays to their max hertz that we do have, 90 on the Oppo, 120 on the other two devices, and we put performance mode on the Oppo and on the Realme over here, and we went into game turbo mode on the Redmi to start off our AnTuTu Benchmark run. And at the top you guys can see the Snapdragons that we are using. We have 8nm technology on the Redmi and 7nm on the other two devices. There is the current stats for battery temperature and CPU temperature, at the top green being the lowest degrees and red being the highest degrees over there. We'll compare that to the end results over here to see which ones get a lot hotter, and also we'll check out the score as well. Don't worry about that one, guys. We do have 6 gigs of RAM on the Redmi. This is now 100% true speed, just to show you guys the jitteriness on all of these devices. This does not happen with a flagship processing chip from Qualcomm, only really with these mid-range chips when running a benchmark over here. This is another 100% true speed over here. This is exactly what you would see in reality, and as I said, guys, you're not going to see much of a difference between the 90 and 120 Hz on the two phones on the left, including the 120 Hz on the Redmi on the right. So we have the hottest battery temperature on the Redmi, but we have the biggest battery decrease on the Oppo, no surprise since it has a smaller battery. We also have the hottest CPU temperature on the Oppo and the coolest pretty much everything on the Realme. I'm really impressed with that. Good on you, Realme, for keeping your device nice and cool, but where they are not good on it is that they have the same processing chip as the Oppo, but guys, 30,000 points lower than the Oppo with the same chip and the same amount of RAM is really disappointing. It's actually closer to the Redmi's 730G chipset, so I'm slightly disappointed in that. When it comes to performance, Realme X50 Pro, X55G, so many different names these days. It's not really impressed me in the performance department. It does feel slightly laggy at times, guys. We do have some issues with the fingerprint sensor. Well, not the fingerprint sensor, the face unlock, but the fingerprint sensor works pretty great. ColorOS 7 or Realme UI, I guess, looks pretty great as well. Looks pretty much like every other Oppo that we've seen, but at least we have Android 10 out the box as we have on the other two devices in this test. We also have Google rooted into the settings, which is cool, and we have that wonderful 5G 765G chipset in it, which is nice to see, though the performance is not quite there with the Oppo. Maybe with an extra update in the future we'll see that improve, like I did with the Oppo. The Oppo got a similar result when I unboxed it last week, so check out that video if you guys have time. The Realme is an awesome phone, though against these two phones here, the only thing I can say going for it is its price right in the middle. It is definitely a cheaper 5G phone than the Oppo. The Redmi is a great phone, pretty much the cheapest phone on this planet for what you get, the 4G version anyway. The Oppo is the thinnest 5G phone in the world with a curved AMOLED punch hole screen, one of my favorites out there, guys. The Realme is a great phone for the price, in the middle for a 5G startup, but that IPS display and performance lacks a bit. The Redmi, you know, it's a starter phone. It's a really good price though. My favorite phone here, I'm sure you guys have guessed it already. If price is not a problem for you, I would definitely pick up the Oppo. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, and until next time, this is Technic.